On December 20, 2021, in San Antonio, Texas, a 3-year-old girl disappeared. Her name was Lina Sardar Khil. She was playing at the playground inside her apartment complex. There were other children around. Her mother stepped away for a few minutes. When she came back, Lina was gone. No one saw her leave. No one saw anyone take her. No cameras recorded what happened. How does a child vanish in the middle of the day in a crowded complex with no trace at all? That is the question investigators, her family, and the public have been asking for years. Police launched a massive search that same night. Officers sealed off the playground. Canine units were brought in. Helicopters circled the area. Divers searched the nearby creek. Hundreds of people joined the effort, but the search turned up nothing. No clothing, no footprints, no sign of Lina. The case drew national attention. The family had come to the United States as refugees from Afghanistan, hoping for safety. Instead, they found themselves in the middle of one of the most puzzling child disappearance cases in recent American history. The FBI joined the investigation. They offered a reward of $250,000 for information. Press conferences were held. Flyers were printed. Age progression images were released. Tips came in from across the country. None led to Lina. More than 2 years later, the file is still open. There are no suspects. There is no evidence that explains what happened. The silence around this case is its most chilling detail. This documentary will take you through the full story. Who Lina was and the life her family built in San Antonio. The timeline of the day she disappeared. The urgent search that followed. The theories, the suspects, and the dead ends. And the lasting impact on her family, her community, and the investigation. Because the question remains, where is Lina Sardar Khil? Before we can understand the events of December 20, 2021, we need to understand the family at the center of it all. Lina Sardar Khil was just 3 years old. She was born into an Afghan family who had fled war and unrest in their homeland. Like many refugees, her parents wanted safety, stability, and a better life. Her father, Imad Khil, worked hard to provide for his family. Her mother stayed at home, raising the children and managing their small apartment. The family was not wealthy. They were not socially connected. They lived a quiet life, focused on survival and adaptation in a new country. They settled at the Villas del Cabo apartments in San Antonio, Texas. This complex was home to many immigrant and refugee families. It was not luxurious, it was crowded, but it was affordable, and it gave Lina's family a place to begin again. For them, San Antonio was supposed to be a place of safety, but instead, it became the place where their worst nightmare began. The daily life of the Khil family was simple and routine. The parents spoke mostly Pashto and Dari, the languages of Afghanistan. Their English was limited. This made it hard for them to connect with the larger community in San Antonio. They relied heavily on the Afghan community around them for help with translation, jobs, and basic needs. Inside the apartment complex, families often stayed among themselves. Children played together outside. Parents gathered in small groups, speaking their own languages. It was a place where people felt surrounded by those who shared similar struggles. But this also created separation. The Khil family, like many others in the complex, lived inside a cultural bubble. They had connections with neighbors who spoke their language, but little interaction with the wider American society outside the complex. This detail would later matter when Lina disappeared. Communication with law enforcement was complicated. Information flowed slowly, and trust between the refugee community and police was limited. When refugees arrive in a new country, they often carry two heavy burdens. The first is the trauma of what they left behind. The second is the struggle of building a new life in a place where everything is unfamiliar. For the Khil family, life in Texas was safer than Afghanistan, but it was not easy. They faced language barriers. Without strong English, daily interactions, doctor visits, school registrations, even police communication were difficult. Every step required help from translators or friends. They faced financial struggles. As new arrivals, they had few resources. Their income was limited. Their options for housing were limited. They ended up in a dense, low-income apartment complex because that was what they could afford. They faced social isolation. Refugee families often remain on the margins of society. They know little about local laws, government systems, or how to seek help effectively. Many also carry a deep mistrust of authority, shaped by experiences in their home countries. This was true for many Afghan families in San Antonio. After Lena vanished, police and FBI agents noted that community members were hesitant to speak openly. Some were afraid of getting involved. Others did not want attention from law enforcement. This silence made the investigation harder. In short, the Khil family was living in a fragile position. They were safe from war, but vulnerable in many other ways. And when disaster struck, those vulnerabilities became clear. The Villas del Cabo apartments were at the heart of the story. This was where Lena's family lived. This was where she played. This was where she was last seen. The complex was crowded and diverse. Families from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Africa, and Latin America all lived there. The playground was always busy. Children played together in groups. Parents watched from benches or from apartment windows. But the complex also had serious limitations. The playground area was not secured. There was no fence to separate children from the streets or wooded areas nearby. There were no surveillance cameras covering the playground. There was no dedicated security guard watching over the area. Safety, in practice, came from the presence of neighbors. Families relied on each other's eyes and ears to keep children safe. But on the day Lena disappeared, that informal system failed. When investigators later pieced together the timeline, they realized how little hard evidence they had. There was no video of Lena walking away, no video of a stranger approaching, no clear account from neighbors of exactly what happened. The environment of the Villas del Cabo, crowded, chaotic, and unsecured, created the perfect conditions for confusion. It was a place where a child could vanish, and where the absence of surveillance left only questions. This is where the tragedy of Lena's disappearance begins to take shape. A young family, new to the United States, still struggling with language and survival. A community made up of refugees and immigrants, close-knit, but hesitant to trust outsiders. A housing complex crowded with children, but lacking even basic safety measures like cameras or fences. All these factors combined to form a fragile situation. When Lena disappeared, investigators faced obstacles from the very first minute. Communication was slow. Witnesses were uncertain. The environment offered no physical evidence. This fragility is not speculation, it is fact. The lack of video footage, the lack of confirmed eyewitnesses, the lack of reliable leads in the first 24 hours, all of it can be traced back to the vulnerabilities of Lena's environment. The Khil family had come to America for safety. But on December 20th, 2021, the very place that was supposed to shelter them became the site of an unexplainable tragedy. By understanding Lena's family and community, we see why this case became so difficult. The disappearance did not happen in isolation. It happened within a vulnerable family, inside a complex with little security, in a community that struggled to communicate with law enforcement. This context sets the stage for what happened next. In Part 3, we will walk through the exact timeline of December 20th, 2021. We will look minute by minute at the afternoon when Lena was last seen. We will see how quickly ordinary life turned into chaos, and how one of the most... It was an ordinary Monday. The date, December 20th, 2021. The place, Villas del Cabo Apartments, San Antonio, Texas. Around 5 p.m., children began gathering at the playground in the center of the complex. It was a familiar scene. Kids running, parents talking, the sound of laughter mixed with the noise of cars and footsteps. Among the children was 3-year-old Lina Sardar Khil. She was playing in the small open playground, surrounded by other children. Her mother was nearby. She watched for a while. She then stepped into their apartment for a few minutes to take care of household chores. The distance between the apartment and the playground was short, only a matter of steps. For her, Lena seemed safe. After all, dozens of families lived there. Many children played there every day. At first glance, there was nothing unusual. The atmosphere was ordinary. The afternoon sun was dropping lower. People were coming home from work. Children were still outside before dinner. Everything looked normal. But within less than 30 minutes, normal turned into chaos. When Lena's mother stepped into the apartment, Lena was still with the other kids. The separation lasted only minutes. The mother expected to come back out and see her daughter still playing. But when she returned, Lena was not there. At first, she assumed Lena had simply moved to another corner of the playground. Maybe she followed other kids behind a building. Maybe she ran into a nearby apartment where she often played. But a quick look around revealed nothing. No sight of Lena, no sound of her voice. The confusion set in quickly. Children playing nearby did not remember when Lena left. No adult recalled seeing a stranger approach her. No one saw Lena walk away. In a matter of minutes, the 3-year-old had disappeared from a crowded area, without anyone noticing how. This was the first turning point, the moment that transformed a safe afternoon into something far more serious. Neighbors joined the search immediately. Parents called out Lena's name. Children ran from one corner to another, checking hidden spots behind the buildings. At first, the assumption was simple. Lena must be hiding, or she must have followed another child into an apartment. But as minutes passed, the confusion grew. The playground was not large. The apartments formed a closed circle. There were only so many places a child could go. Yet Lena was not found. Neighbors knocked on doors. Families opened their apartments to check closets, bathrooms, and bedrooms. Nothing. Later, witnesses told police the same thing. We didn't see her leave. We didn't see anyone take her. That detail, no one saw anything, would haunt the case from the very beginning. Because how could a child vanish in a crowded complex, in daylight, without a single witness? In many modern investigations, cameras provide the first answers. They confirm timelines. They capture suspicious movements. But in this case, the playground had no surveillance cameras. The cameras on the apartment buildings covered entrances and parking areas, but not the small playground where Lena was last seen. That meant investigators had no video of Lena's disappearance, no footage of her leaving the area, no footage of anyone leading her away. From the first hour, this absence was devastating. Police could not rely on digital evidence. They had only human memory. And human memory, especially in chaotic moments, is often unreliable. This lack of video was one of the biggest obstacles in the entire case. It left a blank space exactly where clarity was needed most. By now, panic had replaced confusion. Lena's mother called her husband. He rushed back. Neighbors spread out further. People searched hallways, staircases, parking lots, and wooded edges around the complex. Shouts of "Lena!" echoed through the apartments. Children repeated the name, running from door to door. But after several minutes, the search produced nothing. The feeling in the air changed. What began as a search for a missing child inside the complex was now something darker. It was clear. Lena was gone. The mother, overwhelmed and terrified, reached for her phone and called police. When San Antonio police arrived, they immediately began interviewing residents. Witness accounts were thin. Some neighbors said they saw Lena earlier, playing with other children. Then suddenly she was no longer there. No one could describe a suspicious adult. No one mentioned a vehicle. No one reported hearing Lena scream. The police asked again and again, did anyone see a man? Did anyone see a car? Did anyone see Lena leave? The answers were vague. Some people thought maybe they saw a man near the complex earlier in the day. Others mentioned strangers who sometimes came and went, but none of the details were clear enough to build a solid lead. The truth was brutal. There was no direct witness to Lena's disappearance. The case had started with confusion, but by now, it had become something else entirely. A mystery without clear evidence. The entire sequence of events took less than 10 minutes. A mother stepped inside her apartment. A child continued to play. By the time the mother returned, the child was gone. No one saw her leave. No one saw anyone take her. No cameras recorded what happened. And from that moment on, the case of Lina Sardar Khil turned from a search for a lost child into one of the most baffling.
Once police were on scene, they tried to piece together the exact timeline. 5 p.m., Lena plays at the playground with other children. 5:05 to 5:10 p.m., her mother steps into the apartment briefly. 5:15 to 5:20 p.m., mother returns, Lena is gone. 5:30 p.m., neighbors join the search, no success. 6 p.m., police are called. The official missing child investigation begins. The window of disappearance was frighteningly small. Somewhere in those 10 minutes, Lena vanished. For investigators, this narrow time frame should have been an advantage, but without cameras, without witnesses, the short window only made the case more frustrating. Police considered immediate possibilities. Did Lena wander off alone? Search teams quickly ruled this out. The complex had been searched thoroughly within minutes. Was Lena hiding in an apartment? Officers went door to door. No trace was found. Did someone inside the complex lure her away? Possible, but no one reported seeing it happen. Every theory met the same problem: no evidence. By the time the sun set, the Villas del Cabo complex no longer felt ordinary. Police cars lined the parking lot. Flashlights swept across stairwells and fields. Helicopters circled above. The entire complex had shifted from normal life to the site of a large-scale emergency. But for all the effort, Lena was not found that night. The events of December 20th set the tone for the entire case. A disappearance in a matter of minutes. No camera footage, no reliable witnesses, no physical evidence. From the beginning, investigators were trapped in a vacuum of information, and that vacuum has never been filled. The importance of this timeline is not just in what it shows, but in what it does not show. It does not show a suspect. It does not show a vehicle. It does not show how Lena left the playground. The day ended with more questions than answers, and those questions remain. The timeline of December 20th explains why the search for Lena became so urgent. The disappearance happened fast. The evidence was almost non-existent. In the next part, we will look at the immediate response, the 911 call, the arrival of San Antonio police, the massive search effort that unfolded through the night and into the following days. And yet, despite everything, why no sign of Lena was ever found.
When Lena's mother realized her daughter was not on the playground, she panicked. She searched quickly, but every corner came up empty. The confusion turned into fear. Her next step was immediate. She dialed 911. The call was logged at around 7:15 p.m. The recording captures a mother under stress. Her words were short, broken, and frantic. She told the dispatcher, "My daughter is missing. She was at the playground. She is gone." The dispatcher asked questions. How old was the child? Where was she last seen? How long had she been missing? The answers were shaky, incomplete. The fear in the mother's voice was clear. This call marked the official beginning of the investigation. Before this moment, Lena was just a missing child within her community. After this call, she became the center of a citywide emergency. San Antonio police responded quickly. Units were dispatched immediately after the call. Within minutes, officers arrived at the Villas del Cabo apartments. Their first step was to secure the scene. They taped off the playground. They pushed back residents who were already searching. They wanted to keep the area clear in case there was evidence. The officers began a systematic sweep. They checked every apartment unit closest to the playground. They entered hallways, staircases, and storage rooms. They searched the public restrooms nearby. They walked through laundry rooms, utility spaces, and even dumpsters. They were looking for any sign, clothing, a shoe, a dropped toy, anything that could indicate where Lena had gone. But nothing appeared. There were no footprints, no clothing left behind, no sounds of crying, no forced entry into nearby apartments. It was as if Lena had simply vanished. As the first wave of checks produced no results, police expanded outward. They called in specialized units. Canine teams were deployed. The dogs picked up a scent near the playground. They followed it briefly, but the trail ended near one of the exits of the complex. That was it. The dogs could not track further. Helicopters circled above. Their spotlights scanned rooftops, fields, and wooded areas surrounding the apartment complex. Dive teams entered the nearby creek and drainage areas. They searched for any possibility of an accident, but the water turned up nothing. More officers spread into the surrounding neighborhoods. They knocked on doors. They asked residents if they had seen a little girl, or a suspicious person, or a vehicle leaving the area. Again, no clear answers. By this point, dozens of officers had... While law enforcement carried out their protocols, word spread quickly through the Villas del Cabo complex. Families poured outside. Parents held flashlights. Children shouted Lena's name. Volunteers searched the edges of the property, shining lights into bushes, ditches, and alleyways. Others combed through stairwells and hallways. Rumors spread instantly. Some people claimed they saw a strange man earlier in the evening. Others said they noticed a suspicious vehicle. A few believed Lena might have wandered into another unit. The information was scattered and inconsistent. Witness statements contradicted each other. Some details overlapped, others didn't. For the police, this created chaos. They had to sift through overlapping stories, trying to separate truth from rumor. And in those first hours, rumors wasted valuable time. By 8 p.m., the scene looked like a full-scale operation. Patrol cars blocked entrances and exits. Canine handlers guided their dogs through stairwells and wooded areas. Helicopters circled. Volunteers and officers lined the streets with flashlights. The scale of the response was large, but the results remained empty. From 6 p.m. to midnight, every possible lead was checked. Yet no one saw Lena leave. No one reported hearing a struggle. No camera provided footage. In missing child cases, investigators emphasize the golden hour. The first 60 minutes after a disappearance are often the most important. In those moments, the child is usually still close. Leads are fresh. Witnesses remember details clearly. But in Lena's case, that golden hour passed without a breakthrough. By midnight, hope was fading. The first 6 hours had delivered nothing but dead ends. Given the lack of progress, the San Antonio Police Department contacted the FBI almost immediately. The Bureau had the resources, the technology, and the manpower that local police needed. FBI agents arrived that same night. They brought specialized equipment and trained investigators. They coordinated with local officers, setting up command posts and search grids. The FBI's involvement showed how seriously authorities were treating the case. From day one, this was not just a routine missing person call. This was an emergency with the potential of being a criminal abduction. Yet even with the FBI on the ground, no new evidence surfaced. The failure to find Lena in those first hours was not due to lack of effort. Hundreds of people participated. Every tool available was used. But several factors worked against investigators. No cameras covered the playground. There was no video of Lena's last moments. No direct witnesses saw her leave or get taken. By the time the search wound down in the early morning hours, exhaustion had set in. Officers were tired. Volunteers were drained. The family was devastated. But most importantly, there was still no Lena. No evidence, no suspect. The night had delivered nothing. Those hours, the most critical window for finding a missing child, had closed. And once they closed, the investigation shifted. From a frantic search to a long, uncertain investigation. This was the moment the case transformed from an emergency response into one of the most puzzling disappearances in recent American history. The immediate search was massive. Police, FBI, neighbors, and volunteers joined forces. Helicopters scanned from above. Dogs searched from the ground. Divers searched below water. And yet, nothing emerged. This failure in the first hours would haunt the investigation. From that point forward, every theory, whether abduction, accident, or something else, would suffer from the same problem: no evidence. In the next part, we will examine the theories and suspects, what people thought happened, why investigators considered each possibility, and why, in the end, none of them produced answers. When the first night of the search ended with no results, the case shifted. The playground was empty. The creek had been checked. Helicopters had scanned the skies. Dogs had tracked but lost the scent. Yet there was no Lena. By the next morning, police, FBI, neighbors, and reporters were asking the same question. If she isn't here, then what happened? That question produced the first theories. At the Villas del Cabo complex, people whispered about strangers. Some said they had seen an unknown man walking near the playground earlier that evening. Others claimed a vehicle was parked near one of the exits. None of these stories were consistent. None were detailed enough to point to one suspect. Still, investigators had to take them seriously. From these early accounts, three main theories formed. A random abduction by a stranger. A crime involving someone known to the family or community. Or a possible accident, even though no signs supported it. Each theory made sense in some ways. Each theory also broke apart under closer review. The first and most obvious theory was a stranger abduction. The idea: someone, unknown to Lena's family, saw an opportunity and took her. The argument for this theory was straightforward. The playground was crowded with children, but adults were not watching closely. Lena's mother had stepped away for only a few minutes. The gap of time was small, but enough for someone to act quickly. The Canine units lost her scent at one of the exits of the complex. That detail suggested she may have been placed inside a vehicle and driven away. Investigators knew that random abductions are rare, but when they happen, they often follow a pattern: quick, opportunistic, carried out in seconds. It matched the timeline. A stranger could have been waiting. A child playing near the edge of the playground could be approached. In less than a minute, that child could be gone. But the weaknesses of this theory appeared quickly. No one saw it happen. No one saw an adult pick Lena up. No one recalled a car speeding away. The complex had no cameras pointing at the playground, but nearby cameras on entrances and parking areas also failed to show a suspect vehicle. Without a witness or a camera, the random abduction theory lacked proof. It remained a possibility, but nothing more. The second theory focused not on strangers, but on people close by. Statistically, most child abductions involve someone the child or family knows, relatives, neighbors, or acquaintances. In Lena's case, police examined this possibility carefully. The Villas del Cabo complex was home to many immigrant families, including a large Afghan community. The Khil family was part of this group. They were connected socially, but they also kept to themselves. Rumors began spreading. Some whispered about conflicts within the community. Others suggested jealousy, resentment, or personal disputes. Investigators interviewed dozens of people. They spoke to neighbors. They questioned relatives. They checked alibis, phone records, and movements. The reasoning was clear. If Lena had been taken by someone known, that person would have had access. The playground was open. Families trusted one another. In a community where children often played together, a known face would not raise alarm. But again, the evidence was not there. No witness recalled seeing Lena leave with someone familiar. No one admitted to knowing anything. Phone records and searches of homes produced nothing suspicious. The someone known theory fit statistical patterns, but failed in practice. There was no direct link tying anyone in the community to Lena's disappearance. The third theory was not criminal. It was the idea of a tragic accident. Could Lena have wandered off, fallen into water, or been trapped somewhere nearby? Investigators had to rule this out. The Villas del Cabo complex sat near wooded areas and a small creek. There were drainage pipes, ditches, and open ground. For a 3-year-old, even small hazards could be deadly. That is why, on the very first night, police and rescue teams brought in divers. They checked the creek, culverts, and storm drains. They searched every patch of water. Nothing was found. No clothing. No shoes, no sign of a body. Over the next days, the search expanded. Officers walked through wooded areas. They used infrared cameras at night. They deployed drones. Again, nothing. As the hours turned into days, the accident theory began to collapse. If Lena had fallen or wandered, her body or belongings would almost certainly have been found. The absence of evidence was itself evidence. She likely did not disappear by accident. Each of the 3 theories started strong. Each seemed reasonable at first. Random abduction matched the timeline, but had no witness or video proof. Someone known matched statistics, but lacked direct links to any individual. Accident was logical, but contradicted the extensive searches. Every lead ended the same way. The focus wasn't only on Lena's mother. The entire Khil family came under scrutiny. Detectives questioned relatives multiple times. They searched the family's apartment at the Villas del Cabo complex. They seized phones, checked call logs, examined movements. They reconstructed the timeline minute by minute. The goal was clear: rule out the family completely, or uncover hidden details. After days of work, the conclusion was the same. No member of the Khil family was charged. No one was named as a suspect. Still, the damage was done. Even without charges, the shadow of suspicion followed them. For the family, every public appearance, every interview, was colored by the constant question, do they know more than they're saying? This created a heavy burden. While police had moved on, the public had not. The Afghan refugee community in San Antonio reacted with both unity and tension. On one side, many people rallied around the Khil family. Prayer vigils were held. Donations were collected to support the search. Leaders spoke publicly, calling for compassion and urging anyone with information to come forward. But there was another side. Whispers spread within the community. Some believed the family was hiding something. Others feared speaking up, worried that involvement with police might cause problems for their immigration status. That fear was real. Many Afghan refugees had lived through years of conflict and distrust of authority. In the U.S., that mistrust lingered. When police knocked on doors at Villas del Cabo, some residents hesitated. They didn't want trouble. They didn't want attention. The result was a divided community. Support and suspicion existed side by side, and that division complicated the investigation. Potential witnesses may have held back information, unsure of what to do. Very quickly, the story of Lina Sardar Khil moved beyond San Antonio. National networks picked it up. Headlines appeared. 3-year-old girl vanishes from crowded playground. The case was compelling. A toddler, a refugee family, a disappearance with no clues. Media coverage brought attention but also distortion. The story was often framed as a mystery surrounded by suspicion. Reporters highlighted the mother's absence from the playground at the critical moment. Segments replayed the same line. She left her daughter alone, and when she came back, Lena was gone. That framing fueled public judgment. Instead of focusing on the search, many conversations revolved around whether the parents were responsible. Television trucks parked outside the apartment complex. Journalists knocked on neighbors' doors. Every gesture of the family, whether speaking or staying silent, was scrutinized. As days turned into weeks, the weight grew heavier. The family was under pressure from investigators, questioned again and again. They were under pressure from their own community, where support was mixed with suspicion. And they were under pressure from the national media, which treated every development as breaking news. Yet none of this pressure produced answers. San Antonio police found no evidence against the family. The FBI found no evidence pointing to a suspect. The community had no confirmed witness. All that remained were theories and doubt. Instead of clarity, there was division. Instead of comfort, there was judgment. For the Khil family, the tragedy of Lena's disappearance was compounded by a second burden: living under suspicion in full public view. This was the cruel irony. While the investigation struggled to move forward, the focus shifted away from Lena. The missing girl was no longer the only story. The family had become the story. The questions kept coming. Why wasn't the mother watching? What about the father? Could someone in the family be hiding something? But every answer circled back to the same fact. There was no evidence. Silence sat at the center of the case. The silence of witnesses who saw nothing. The silence of cameras that recorded nothing. The silence of leads that went nowhere. The pressure on the family grew, but the mystery remained unsolved. In the end, the scrutiny produced only pain. It did not produce the truth about what happened to Lena. Weeks had passed since Lena vanished. The first searches had failed. No camera footage, no reliable witness, no physical evidence. The case was not closed. It could not be. But investigators faced a painful truth. They were working almost blind. That's when outside forces stepped in. By January 2022, the FBI became deeply involved. This was no longer just a city case. It was now a federal case. The agency announced a $150,000 reward for any information leading to Lena's recovery. It was one of the largest rewards ever offered in San Antonio for a missing child. Later, that reward increased to $250,000. The announcement was broadcast nationwide. TV anchors repeated the same words. 3-year-old Lina Sardar Khil missing from a playground. Reward, $250,000. The goal was clear. Someone, somewhere, had to know something. Money can bring people out of silence. Money can make a frightened witness step forward. Tips poured in. Hundreds of calls, emails, and online submissions, each one logged, checked, and followed. But investigators soon found a problem. Most of the calls had no real value. Rumors, theories, people repeating what they heard on the news. Some tips were impossible to verify. Others were dead ends within hours. Not one tip led to Lena. Not one tip produced evidence. The reward remained unclaimed. Instead of answers, there was only silence. The money was there, waiting, but no one came forward with the truth. This failure was devastating, because a reward that large usually breaks a case. But here, it did nothing, and the mystery of Lena's disappearance only deepened. While the FBI worked leads, San Antonio police continued searching. Searches that had started around the apartment complex expanded further. Crews swept through wooded areas around the Villas del Cabo apartments. Fields were cleared, abandoned lots checked, brush cut back. The nearby creek and river became points of focus. Divers entered the cold water, combing the bottom for any sign of a child. Specialized sonar equipment scanned the area. Canine units were redeployed. Dogs followed scent trails. But again and again, the trail ended near the exits of the complex. That suggested Lena might have been taken out of the area quickly. But without video, no one could confirm. Helicopters hovered above. At night, floodlights lit up fields and woods. Every shadow was checked. Police even searched drainage systems. Cameras pushed through dark, narrow tunnels under the complex. Every inch was examined. Technology joined manpower. Drones flew overhead. Thermal imaging cameras scanned for heat signatures. Nothing was found. Days turned to weeks. The searches grew wider, covering more ground. But each ended the same way. No clothes, no shoes, no toys, no sign of Lena. Time moved on. Months passed. The case stayed open, but leads grew colder. In an effort to keep Lena's name alive, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released age progression images. These were not photographs. They were computer-generated pictures, showing what Lena might look like as she grew older. 1 year later. 2 years later. The purpose was simple: keep the public from forgetting. If someone saw a child who looked like Lena, they might report it. Each time the images were released, they appeared across TV and social media. Posters were updated, flyers distributed. The images showed a slightly older Lena, different, but recognizable. The message was clear. She is still missing. She could still be out there. But despite the wide coverage, no credible leads came in. The images circulated, were shared, were discussed. But not one person stepped forward with proof. The age progressions kept Lena visible, but they did not bring her home. Over the next 2 years, both the FBI and San Antonio police held multiple press conferences. Each one had the same message: we need the public's help. Flyers were printed in English, Spanish, and Pashto. Billboards went up in the city. Officers went door to door again, hoping someone would finally talk. Community events were held: prayer vigils, memorials, and anniversaries of Lena's disappearance. At each one, officers repeated the same plea: if you know something, say something. On television, the case was revisited. National news segments highlighted the unanswered questions. The huge reward was mentioned every time. But the cycle repeated. Every appeal generated calls, every call was checked, and every call led nowhere. Investigators began to face the reality. Either no one had seen what happened, or the person who knew the truth would never come forward. Despite the appeals, despite the attention, the case refused to move. By late 2023 and into 2024, the case was stalled. There was no progress to report. No suspects had been identified. No arrests were made. No physical evidence had surfaced. The file remained open on every desk, marked active. But active meant waiting. Waiting for a new lead. Waiting for one break that never came. Detectives reviewed old interviews. They checked timelines again. They reread witness statements. Nothing new emerged. Every possible theory, abduction, accident, someone known, had been explored. Each one lacked proof. More than 2 years after December 20th, 2021, the silence remained. Silence from witnesses, silence from evidence, silence from the person who knew what happened. For the Khil family, that silence meant no closure. For investigators, it meant frustration. For the public, it meant the same haunting question: where is Lena? The FBI repeated its statement: someone out there knows the truth. But whoever that someone was, they had not spoken. Rewards were still on the table. Searches had been done and redone. Images had been released. Press conferences held. Yet nothing had changed. The silence was not just absence. It was weight. It was the unanswered echo every time her name was called. That silence turned Lena's case into more than just a local tragedy. It became one of the most unsettling mysteries in America. A child vanished in front of people, in daylight, at a crowded apartment complex, and 2 years later, there was still no trace. The later investigation showed the full scale of effort. Federal agents, massive rewards, high-tech searches, public campaigns. Every tool was used, every angle explored. But the case remained unsolved. And so the mystery of Lina Sardar Khil did not fade. It hardened. From here, the story shifts again, to what happens when years pass, evidence runs dry, and all that is left is memory, division, and questions. More than 2 years have passed since December 20th, 2021. Lina Sardar Khil is still missing. No suspect, no confirmed evidence, no answers. The case remains open. But for the family, the community, and the city of San Antonio, the silence has been crushing. For Lena's parents, every day since that night has been the same question repeated: where is she? They came to the United States for safety, hoping to build a life away from conflict. But in San Antonio, they faced a different kind of loss. From the beginning, they were placed under the microscope. Criticism over the 911 call, speculation about their role, whispers that they were hiding something. Police cleared them. No charges were ever filed, but public suspicion did not go away. Even today, they live with the double weight of grief and judgment. They attend vigils. They stand in front of cameras. They ask for help, again and again. But what they want most, Lena's return, has never come. The Afghan refugee community in San Antonio reacted with pain and division. Many rallied around the family. Prayer gatherings filled courtyards. Donations were collected to support searches. Others whispered doubts. Rumors spread quickly about what the parents knew, about what might have happened. Some residents admitted they were afraid to speak to police. Language barriers and fear of authorities kept witnesses silent. This silence may have cost investigators critical information. The result, from the first night, media attention was intense. Local stations reporting live from the apartment complex. National outlets picked up the story within days. Headlines framed the disappearance as a mystery with few clues. The coverage kept Lena's name in the public eye. But it also placed enormous pressure on the family. Every interview was scrutinized, every statement dissected. Some commentators focused less on the investigation and more on the family's appearance, tone, or culture. The narrative shifted, from a child missing to speculation about the parents. This clouded the real issue. There was no evidence, and no suspect. The media storm helped keep the case alive, but it also amplified suspicion without delivering answers. San Antonio police and the FBI continue to list Lena as a missing person. The case remains active. Officials repeat the same line: someone knows what happened. We need that person to come forward. Despite massive searches, despite a $250,000 reward, despite national coverage, no breakthrough has come. The case sits in a painful space, not cold, but stalled, still open, but unmoving. Lena's disappearance is not only about one child. It represents larger issues. The vulnerability of refugee families, the gaps in community trust with law enforcement, the weaknesses of surveillance and safety in crowded housing complexes. Her case became a symbol, a reminder that in America, even in daylight, even in public, a child can vanish without a trace, and that sometimes, despite every effort, justice remains out of reach. So where is Lena? Was she taken by a stranger? By someone she knew? Did she wander into danger, unseen by everyone around her? No one can answer. Not the police, not the FBI, not the community. The silence has lasted for more than 2 years. It may last longer. But until the truth is known, the case of Lina Sardar Khil will remain one of the most haunting mysteries in recent American history. This case is still open. The file is still active. The reward is still offered. But the investigation needs more than silence. It needs truth. It needs courage from someone who knows what happened. As we close this story, one question remains. Will justice ever come? Or will Lena's name stay on the list of children who vanished without explanation? Tell us what you think. Which theory makes the most sense? Do you believe someone in the community is still hiding the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe stories like Lena's need to be remembered, please share this video and subscribe for more true crime investigations.